week in local news, Songwriters of Lake Havasu assemble. DC Comics and Marvel Comics sell a few comic books. Supergirl leaks some casting news, and it looks like they're finally putting a face on the Big Blue Boy Scout. Drake binges on Voltron and loves him some Warcraft movie. All this and more on this week's Hava Geek Cast. It's Sunday morning, June 12th. I'm Mike Woodard, and this guy right here, we like to call him Drake Finney. Drake, what's going on, buddy?
Oh, there's a ton of stuff going on, Mike. I've had a great week. What about you?
It's been a pretty good week. Let's talk local.
All right. On the local scene right now, for those of you that missed the first two auditions for the Havasu Songwriters 2016 Festival at Fugs, you can actually catch the third because they've had so many sign up. They've thrown in an extra date, and that's going to be June 22nd. So come on down to Fugs about 4 p.m. and catch a glimpse at some amazing songwriters. Later today, now that I've gotten a few minutes free, we're going to be posting videos from the second day of auditions, which was back on the 8th. And I got to tell you, there are some very, very talented songwriters in our local area, very talented musicians, and we're going to be posting it up there. We're helping back them along with Purple Griffin and Laugh Out Loud and many other sponsors in town. So if you want to see it live, come on down June 22nd, check it out at Fugs, and you're going to hear the last chance auditions for these songwriters to get into the Songwriting Music Festival for 2016.
Now, when exactly is that? You know, if people wanted to go there and be there in person for it, when is that again?
And that's at 4 p.m. And it's also good to point out that all proceeds that are being raised by the Songwriters Festival does go to the Havasu K-12 Foundation, specifically for your arts and your musical programs and your fine arts. So every bit that's being raised by this festival goes straight back to the kids to help them out.
Super cool. And Hava Geek Cast, we're really proud to be able to be involved in this and help back it. All right.
We've done a couple live streams off of the YouTube channel a little bit, learning the system. And I got to tell you, some of those songs that those people have come with have just absolutely been outstanding.
Very cool. All right, moving along to some comic book news. Really, the only two things that anybody's talking about right now are on the Marvel and DC side. We're talking the developments with Captain America and DC's Rebirth initiative. And with Cap, well, I guess you could say that they've achieved their objective. That episode sold out in about 30 seconds. Episode? See, I confuse my comic books with my TV shows these days. Every issue is an episode now. That episode, one more time. That issue of Captain America sold out in about 30 seconds. And sure, it's going to go to a second and probably even a third reprint. But if you're a collector, that's huge news because the second and third reprint never as valuable as the first. So Marvel achieved their objective. They sold some damn comic books. You know what, Drake, man? I'm gonna make an admission to you. I've decided to sit this storyline out.
Okay.
I did intend to read the book and kind of try and follow it, but it's not so much that I'm not on board as it is that I'm not interested. And I know that might sound like, the same thing in two different directions. It's not. The hype has kind of pushed me away from the event. That and combined with the absolute certain knowledge that when it's all over, we'll get Cap back, the way we want him. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to wait for that to happen. So, yeah, a bad comic book reviewer, and I'll freely admit that. But at the same time, this is how we make our voices known. You pay the money or you don't. And I'm not a fan of gimmicks, and I really feel like this is a gimmick. I hope it's a good story, and I hope that the people who are buying it enjoy it. But I've just decided not to put my money behind it.
I've not found the first issue of it yet, so I've not actually read it either.
Yeah.
But for me, because Marvel released Civil War at the exact same time, Civil War II, which of course is involving Thanos and Rhodey and Captain Marvel and Iron Man, all of them. I actually found myself more enjoying that even more than the reviews. I've started looking up Civil War II. I've gone back and found the lead-up issues to it. For me, and maybe it was, yeah, I'm kind of like you. To me, it's a gimmick. It rocked everybody, but I think everything calmed down when they went to Stan Lee, and Stan Lee looked at them and said, "No, they've done exactly what they needed to do. They need to sell comics. They caused a stir."
Yeah.
I never thought of the idea. The writers never, the people he started with never thought of the idea. He applauded him for taking the leap, but at the same time, he even sat there and said, "This is just to sell comics."
Absolutely. And Stan the Man Lee is, if nothing else, a marketer. He's the P.T. Barnum of the comic book world, and always has been. One of my other podcasts called Panel by Panel, one of the things we're doing right now is rereading some early Fantastic Four stuff, written by Stan Lee and drawn by Jack Kirby. And in its way, these older books, and I'm talking stuff from like the early 60s, was just as sensational as what they're doing with Cap right now. And I say sensational in the attention-grabbing sense. So while I'm not going to be, critical of Marvel for the storyline itself, like I said, I just don't feel like buying into the gimmick, and that's really, to be honest with you, that's all I have to say on the subject. It is interesting to me that the Captain America controversy is selling way more comic books for Marvel than the Civil War event is.
And I agree with you. I'm surprised at that, too, because if most people don't know, the Civil War II event, we had 2 major deaths right off the bat, and of course, probably like the other Infinity Gauntlet and all that, they'll find a way to bring them back in the end. But it was just a shaker of, wow, hey, we're not pulling punches.
Yeah.
I think the better story right now is in Civil War II. But also, I got to also look at the longevity of Cap. 75 years, to be an iconic superhero, even whatever they're doing with his storyline right now, it's been an amazing run. Not many people have that longevity.
Yeah. So, one last note, and then we'll move on from Captain America. Something I didn't know until this week, or didn't realize, was that the writer who is writing this particular Captain America storyline is the same guy who a couple years ago wrote the Superior Spider-Man storyline where Doc Ock, Otto Octavius, took over the consciousness of Peter Parker and completely replaced him in the books for the better part of a year. Yep. So this is a similar kind of animal. But at the same time, I didn't look at the Superior Spider-Man storyline as a gimmick. I looked at it more as, the Civil War II kind of a thing. So, interesting. And we'll kind of watch what's going on from the outside, even though I'm not reading the book. But moving on to the other comic book news, Rebirth going gangbusters, and one of the more successful things that DC Comics has done in years. Much more attention-grabbing and critically accepted than the New 52 event, which, interestingly enough, ties into Rebirth. Did you read the Rebirth issue?
I finally got a hold of the Rebirth issue. I sat down with it. I enjoyed it.
Wasn't
and you're
great?
right.
Wasn't it? I mean, easily the best single issue of a comic book I've read in years.
It really, I thought you maybe overhyped the part with Barry and Wally, but yeah, when I got to those panels and I got to that part, I was like going, wow, because for me, this totally didn't dismiss 52. This didn't dismiss anything. It's bringing it all back together and tying this nice package for you. So
yeah,
for me, as big of a Marvel fan as I am, Rebirth has really just blown everything away.
Yeah, and we're already into the second week of Rebirth tie-in books, which is to say that each one of the main books that are going to carry forward out of this event are all each getting a Rebirth version, which is a single one-off issue setting up the next amount of run. And I read the first week. I've got the second week kind of on the shelf ready to be read as soon as I can find the time to get around to doing it. But that first set of books, super cool. And let's see, it's been about a month since the Rebirth issue came out, at least 3 weeks. So we're going to do a little bit of spoiling here. If you haven't read the issue yet, just jump ahead a minute or two. But the big event and the only real controversy involved in Rebirth is the tie-in of Alan Moore's Watchmen storyline from the late 80s. And the fact that Dr. Manhattan is the individual responsible for the missing 10 years. And what Jeff Johns has decided to sort of stipulate is that all the major changes that occurred when New 52 hit was caused by our heroes and the DC universe having that 10 years extracted. A lot of relationships that would have been set up in that 10-year period didn't happen because those 10 years were gone. So it's a bit of a stretch story-wise, but it's interesting enough. And while I dug the Watchmen series, I wasn't the rabid fan that a lot of people are. So I'm taking a wait and see sort of attitude towards that particular development. But for most people and most hardcore DC comic book fans, everybody's on the edge of their seat. Everybody's just kind of drooling for, figuring out what's happening next. And the long and short of it is DC also selling a crap load of comic books, which is good for the medium. That's never a bad thing. Whether you like the book or not, if it's selling and making money, that's what the intention is.
Yeah, and we've got some amazing artists and writers right now in the comic book industry that are giving us these stories. So it's well worth the attention it's getting.
Yeah. And if Jeff Johns is going to step away from comics and focus on TV and movies, like he's going to, that announcement came in the last few weeks, he couldn't have gone out on a higher note, I think.
And that's exactly right. I think that's one of the best things because he's put his best foot forward, and we want to see that style and that creativity carry into the TV and to the movies.
Yeah. So, all right. Speaking of TV, there was a little bit of Supergirl news. Some casting news has leaked out. The two character choices I'm interested in, because I'm a grumpy old comic book geek. There's a character named Snapper Carr, who is essentially the Rick Jones of the DC universe. He's the teenage sidekick of the Justice League from the 60s, in the same way that Rick Jones was the teenage sidekick of the Avengers over on Marvel for a long, long time. And apparently a version of the Snapper Carr character is going to be introduced into Supergirl next year. And somebody finally got it okayed by somebody else. We're finally going to see Superman actually on the show. They're going to cast an actor in the role, and instead of seeing that Spielbergian flair standing, behind a silhouette or a pair of boots with some legs jutting off, right off your TV screen, we're actually going to see Superman be Superman on Supergirl. And I think that's great. If I still think we're going to lose Kat, she'll be a recurring character. And that makes me sad because I love Callista Flockhart a lot. But if they bring these guys in and the storylines are great, I'll be sad for a little while and then I'll be happy again.
Yeah, it's for me, it's when I agree with you. Losing Callista Flockhart, as she has become such a cornerstone for that show, it's going to hurt, but I see them building the foundation, as you said, for where they're going to go with the next direction. I find it interesting, as we've had talk about her being more involved with the CW Arrowverse, to bring in a heavy hitter like the actual Superman, because it ties into what Rip Hunter, so I was kind of confused, but as Rip Hunter said on Legends, he's seen Men of Steel break and Dark Knight's fall, so again, it's the CW universe always giving us the hints that there's more out there and they could drop it in your lap whenever they want.
Yeah, and something that I'm interested, when we get our big mega crossover, like we're going to get, like we've been told is coming.
We've been promised.
The thing that they've developed on Arrow and in the Arrowverse is that there is no Batman and no Superman. Which means that the Arrowverse is in an alternate world. It's not in mainstream DC continuity. But it's not been explicitly spelled out either. So I'm interested in finding out, are they going to change that? Because it's been established that Supergirl is in a different universe than the Flash and Arrow. And Legends is going to, it's all been about time travel up until now. But starting next season, it's going to be hopping universes. And we know that because of the introduction of the Justice Society. So it's just more stuff to be interested in finding out about. And just stay tuned here to the Hava Geek Cast, because as soon as we know, you will. Now, you saw the, you know what? I've never been a big Voltron fan. I admitted that to you just before the show started. But you're into it, man. You've seen the latest trailer, I take it?
I've not only seen the latest trailer for Voltron, I actually stayed up yesterday and I watched all 11 episodes on Netflix.
Nice. I didn't realize that had actually had happened.
Yeah,
give us
actually had rolled out.
Give us a quick capsule review.
Okay, my review of it, because I was the traditional 80s kid that was on at 4:30 when I got home from school, literally had to run off the bus, run into the house, and I'd catch my Voltron episode. There have been changes. It is a reboot, and it is a true reboot. And they do give a head nod and almost respect to the Go Lion that this actually came from in Japan, because of course it was done over there, and they Americanized it for I would say Saturday morning television, but like I said, it was on during the week. But they toned it down. Now this supposedly is rated Y7. But it's action-packed. It's got some teeth to it. I really liked the direction they went with it. And what I liked is the fact that after the 11th episode, and I'll cover some more broad spectrum, but after the 11th episode, it was one where I was sitting there going, you're leaving me with this here? And literally, they totally cliffhangered you. They totally just left you going, no. There's got to be more. Same premise as the original Voltron. 5 heroes get together, find the lions, are trying to defeat Zarkon. But they've really changed it up a bit. Before, I don't know how much you watched the original episodes, but there was a character named Sven who was kind of Swedish. And he kind of got taken out of the series due to an injury. Well, this time they've left him in because he was originally in more of the Japanese version. And he's the only one who's had his name changed, because what they did is they changed his name back to what the original character is which was of Shiro. They've tied it in more, though, with a more almost Knights of the Old, because they actually referred to instead of just the space cadets that they were in the last one, they're actually called paladins. So there's more of almost a mystical area to it. And it is your good versus evil, but they have a twist, like I said, in that 11th episode. There's multiple episodes that have little twists that have you going, this ain't exactly my old Voltron, but yet they still do the head nods to it. So if you were a Voltron fan, I say give it a watch. If you weren't and you just watched it a little bit, give the first few episodes a couple looks, at least for the graphics, at least as far as they've come as far as animation, because this is actually from DreamWorks. So take a look at it. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
All right, we're going to wrap up the show with the thing you knew we were going to wrap it up with, and that's Warcraft. Now, standard situation, Drake gets to the movies before I do for reasons, and Drake has seen it. Now, looking at the whole situation from the outside, and I want Drake to address this, because not only is he a moviegoer, but he's also a gamer, a board gamer, and the target demographic for this movie. The thing that I've noticed is that critics, not all that impressed. If you're not a gamer, it's a weird movie for you, it seems. If you are a gamer, you love this thing like you love your mom. So, Drake, what's your opinion, man?
Okay, now here's the thing. I watched some of the reviews because I've got some connections. They said I am a gamer. But I also have some vested interest in Warcraft as well because it is near and dear to my heart for multiple reasons that are on the personal side. But I also have a friend that actually works for Blizzard. So seeing them venture out and try this movie with Legendary, I was fingers crossed, Yes, they've had some things like everyone screams about the pandas. I personally love the pandas. It's overall, and I've heard the panning of the diehard people saying, well, it's good, it's great. People, let me back this up here. Moviegoers that are going to it right now were thinking they were going to get a World of Warcraft movie.
Right.
Now, there is a difference because this is actually based on the real-time strategy game way back in the 90s. Back when you were clicking your guy and, zug and going chopping wood and mining mines and building your town up to battle. It is that storyline. It's that first walk we did down the Warcraft orcs versus humans storyline. Now, I've heard the critics pan it, and they're saying it, too many characters, too much fighting, and they're going down this whole list of everything they see wrong with it, and they're really picking it apart because it's a video game movie, and that's where I think they're missing the point.
Yeah.
Because when I walked out, and we were talking about it, and I knew more of the history. My wife kind of came in second, and we had a person there with us that had no idea of the history. And believe it or not, the one that got into it really the most was the person that had no idea.
Oh, cool.
They really just fell into this because they liked fantasy, and they fell into this big fantasy world. Occasionally they did ask, well, who is this? And by mid-movie, they knew exactly who everyone was. And I knew that was something that one of the critics that I listened to said, too many characters. I don't know who's who. But I looked at my wife after the movie and I said, the non-Tolkien fans also at the end of the first Hobbit couldn't name all the dwarves that came into Bilbo's place. Now, I'm not saying that Warcraft, because I know some people have their shackles up right now. I'm not saying Tolkien and Warcraft are on the same literature level. But it is the same story of good versus evil. Anyone can sit down and watch this, whether you're the gamer, whether you're just the fantasy person, or you're just looking to be entertained. And you're going to see a wonderful story of good versus evil, but not just the orcs and humans are good versus evil. There's also inner layers of, on the good side, or what would be seen as the human side and the orc side of good versus evil inside the factions. The CGI, because I grew up playing in these towns and these cities and or with these creatures, was outstanding. It was spot on. Too many times I'm used to watching orcs and they look like just rubber masks or anything like that. The detail that the graphics crew took to make this CGI work, you've got the shadows casting, you've got wrinkles, you've got every bit that really put them on par with the humans they're acting with. And I got to give it to the actors. It didn't feel, perfect example, with Phantom Menace. I could always tell that Liam Neeson and the one that played Ewan McGregor, they were always looking at the bobblehead that was supposed to be Jar Jar Binks' top of the head when they put the CGI on. This one, these actors were spot on exactly where they needed to look, needed to reach, needed to touch. So overall, and I've heard a lot of people give ratings, I'm going to sit there and say for the first installment of Warcraft, I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10.
Cool. Very good. Now, something that I read that I kind of like the idea of, like you said, this goes back to the origins of the Warcraft game, which opens up the World of Warcraft and all that stuff to any future sequels. Do you think we're going to get to see that, or is this going to wind up being a standalone movie?
If it wasn't for the overseas numbers, I think we might be looking at a standalone movie just because how everyone's being standoffish. The way I look at this is Warcraft is going to get some feet under it 3 or 4 weeks down the line because of the fact that people are just going to, okay, I'll finally go see it. And then they're going to walk out and go, wow, that was really good. But with the overseas activity, because in China right now, it's, the number one movie out there, hands down. We will see other sequels in this. They set it up for the sequels. And as my wife and I were talking about, I see there being a Warcraft 2 and a Warcraft 3 in the same progression as the video games.
Right.
But I see Warcraft 3 being exactly what it was in the video games, where they're going to introduce the Arthas storyline. And when they do that and do Arthas and the Lich King, that's when you will have the mass hysteria of everyone going, this can't just be a trilogy. We need 4. And then they could break out into Warcraft. I know Nathan Adler and I were talking the day after we saw it and joking about it, that just based on the video games that released, if Blizzard was kind enough to give us a movie for every game every year, we'd be sitting here till 2027.
Yeah.
Which I'm fine with, because there's that much lore in the games, and we could even go further. There's a lot of areas I'm just impressed with. If nothing else, like I said, the step up in CGI was absolutely beautiful.
Nice. Anything we didn't cover that we need to touch base on before we wrap up the show?
No. It's everything literally on my desk that I can see.
Okay.
You have an assignment of course, watch Voltron, even though I know you're not quite a fan. Just give 2 episodes a chance. Just do that for me. And then we're going to have to sneak you out to Warcraft.
All right. That sounds good, man. Get in touch with us on our Facebook page. Just search Hava Geek Cast on Facebook. If you don't already like us, you need to like us, because we're a couple pretty likable guys.
Yes.
We've got a YouTube channel out there that we're developing, and we'll kind of break news on that and where you can find it and how you can subscribe to that in the coming weeks. We finally got email and Twitter set up, didn't we?
Yes, we do. Twitter is at Hava Geek Cast. Very simple on Twitter. And then the email right now is havageekcast@gmail.com.
And those conduits will get you directly to Drake, and then Drake just kind of tells me what's going on. Because that's how we roll.
I remember to check them.
Yeah, there you go. But the thing I can tell you for a fact is the more you get involved, the more your voice will enter into the show. Because that's the thing. We want to know what you're geeky about, so we can geek out with you too. So that's going to wrap it up for this week's Hava Geek Cast. Make sure you tune in next week, every single Sunday. We get it up on our Facebook page as early as we can in the morning, but it's always up by no later than 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So, Drake, that's going to do it for me this week, buddy.
That's going to do it for me, too. And everyone, have a geek week.